What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into TTP Sports. And once again, warning for all of you that are tuning in tonight. I sound very congested because I am very congested. My nose is clogged as badly as you could think it is, so my voice is going to sound very weird through this time. So you're just going to have to deal with it. You're just going to have to bear with me for the next, 25, 30 minutes here as we talk some Phillies off season. So I'm just putting that warning out for you there if my voice just sounds weird to you guys. So without further ado, I digress. What's going on, everybody? Talking some off season here for the Philadelphia Phillies. And we got some interesting things here to talk about. We got a lot of stuff from, John Middleton and everything like that. As, the MLB offseason started, what was it, like a few days ago, yesterday or something like that. There's been, quite the many rumors, talks going on. I believe the GM meetings are just around the corner or something like that. I believe they start tomorrow, if I am not mistaken, even though I'm not really expecting anything major to come around for the GM meetings. You're really not going to expect much until the winter meetings start in December. But there's been a lot of talk, and we got some interesting articles right here. I got a few of them that are, specifically talking about John Middleton and maybe on some rumors and quotes from Bob Nightingale in terms of what the Phillies are possibly trying to do and what they're listening for this offseason. So there's a lot of interesting things to go around here. And this Phillies offseason is a big one. We all know they got to make changes. They can't run it back once again with the same exact team. And the stuff that I'm hearing and that I'm seeing from John Middleton makes it sound like that's going to be the case, where he wants to make changes and he's willing to do anything possible in order for those changes to be made. You even saw a few days ago before the offseason started that the Phillies brought in 3 different investors to basically increase the spending limits that this team has. So that definitely tells me a lot of things, that John Middleton is basically willing to do anything possible. John Middleton knows what the fan base wants. He understands what the fans are angry about. He understands everything. He basically thinks like a fan that is as frustrated as we were with the way the team played in the second half, frustrated as basically everybody with the way they performed in the playoffs against the New York Mets, where the offense once again just went insanely cold and completely screwed you out of possibly a deep playoff run. So he knows. He knows things have to be done. He knows changes have to be made. And he is going to do whatever it is, whatever it takes to make sure those changes happen. And, to try to make sure that what happened in the playoffs the past couple of seasons with the way the offense was is, by the wayside. So we got to wait and see what happens, but there are definitely some interesting things here from John Middleton. So there's even some things, not from John Middleton too. Even talking about, what the Phillies, in terms of trades and maybe players that they're interested in, because there were some quotes about, bullpen pieces, talks about who they're listening to in trade talks on the roster. So you got guys that they're listening to like Nick Castellanos, Alec Bohm, Brandon Marsh. They're willing to listen on those 3 guys. And I'm not really shocked. Nick Castellanos, even before this season, during last offseason, was circled around in trade rumors and everything like that. So I'm definitely not shocked that there's the case. Maybe his value went up with the way that he played this season and the way that he performed in the playoffs. But I would be very shocked if Nick Castellanos would be the one that gets traded. I definitely don't think that's going to be the case with him. I think he's mainly a lock for the roster. It does get interesting when you get into the Alec Bohm and the Brandon Marsh stuff, because that's basically what I would expected coming into this offseason. Basically, when you're going through the playoffs, Alec Bohm gets benched. He's still having the temper tantrums. He's still having the attitude issues, and maybe it's starting to rub off Rob Thompson the wrong way, basically, and he's just getting tired of the shtick. And maybe that, goes into this offseason with, I'm sure Alec Bohm does have value in this league because he is a guy that can be a 280-plus hitter. He's definitely improved drastically in the field, and he can use the entire field. He's a doubles machine, so he can drive in runs. That's one of his best attributes. So he is going to have value in this league, especially with, him not making that much money. It's just, will a team be interested in, okay, he could do X, Y, and Z. Can we add, this to his game? Can we find a way to implement more home run power into his games? Because we know he can, hit doubles. He can go from gap to gap, and he can play a very solid third base because he's really improved in that area. Can we find a way to unlock the potential of his power. Maybe that would entice the team in a trade market. I'm not entirely sure. And Brandon Marsh, I'm not sure what his value would be. It definitely wouldn't be a lot. It would probably be like, a situation when they traded, Logan O'Hoppe, basically flip-flop Logan O'Hoppe for Brandon Marsh. It would probably be one of those type of situations. Even though Brandon Marsh, he is basically a platoon guy at this point, even though he's still fairly young in this league, his numbers do indicate that he is, at this point in his career, he is more of a platoon option to where he's only going to hit against right-handed pitching. So I'm not sure how much value that gauges in the league. He does play a very good left field. He's one of the best defensive left fielders in the entirety of Major League Baseball. So maybe there is some value circled towards that, but I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I would be very shocked if Nick Castellanos is traded. Bohm is probably the most likely one I do expect to not be on the roster next year. I basically pointed out 3 guys that I wouldn't be shocked is moved going into next season. That's Alec Bohm, that's Brandon Marsh, and possibly Bryson Stott. And Bryson Stott's probably lowest on the list of those 3 guys. I don't expect him to be moved, aside from more of a Brandon Marsh and an Alec Bohm. So there's definitely some decisions to be made there. And it's obvious that the Phillies will be taking calls on those guys, even with Nick Castellanos, because like I said, they were listening to calls on him last year. And maybe a team is more willing to take on a Nick Castellanos because he only has 2 years left of his contract, making $20 million a season. Maybe that's less of a burden instead of 3 years at $20 million. Maybe, 2 years at $20 million, teams are more willing to take just because it's only a 2-year window with Nick Castellanos. So there's definitely some intriguing ways that they can go in this offseason. And there was also a quote here that I believe this was from Matt Gelb, and Phillies Tailgate posted this on Twitter. And the quote basically talking about the bullpen situation and how the Phillies, want to attack that situation, because we all know Jeff Hoffman's a free agent. Carlos Estevez is a free agent. So those are your 2, back-end bullpen guys that are hitting the market. Hoffman, I wouldn't be shocked if they kept him. Estevez is probably more the likely guy I would see walk, and the Phillies not re-sign him. Hoffman's more likely guy I would think they resign. I wouldn't be shocked they didn't bring back both, because bullpen guys are 100% interchangeable. So, and there's been so many rumors, there's been so many MLB insiders that post their predictions of where free agents are going to land. And the one mainstay that I have been seeing from a lot of the MLB people out there and their predictions is that Tanner Scott is the guy that most likely the Phillies are, one of the most likely guys the Phillies will go after is Tanner Scott. And that would definitely be a huge pickup for the bullpen, because Tanner Scott has been a very dominant left-handed option out of the bullpen for a while now. He improved mightily over his past few years with the Marlins. Got a big trade package this deadline with the Padres. Continued to be great over there, and he's definitely a great back end of the game type of guy and a very dominant lefty. And the Phillies could benefit from another dominant lefty out of their bullpen. And there's also a quote right here that Phillies Tailgate brought up from Matt Gelb's article here. And the quote says, "Rebuilding the bullpen is the priority. The Phillies will seek at least 2 late-inning relievers to fortify a group that returns Matt Strahm, Orion Kerkering, and Jose Alvarado." And the picture that they used there, I believe, was Ryan Helsley from the St. Louis Cardinals. And I do remember saying that predictions and stuff for the offseason, like I said, from different MLB insiders and all that stuff, saying that maybe the Cardinals shop Ryan Helsley this offseason, and maybe Philadelphia could be a team that swings in and tries to trade for him. I would love to get a package of Ryan Helsley. That would be nice. If you sign a Tanner Scott and also add Ryan Helsley to the back of the bullpen, that's a really great, fantastic 1-2 option there. Even though Ryan Helsley would be the closer, I believe last year he led Major League Baseball in saves, so he is primarily the closer, and Tanner Scott would be your 8th inning option type of guy. That would probably give the Phillies a primary closer for the first time in a while, because I'm not sure if they're I'm not sure if they're going to be willing to go to a full-time closer, or if they're going to go to the same thing that they've been doing for the past couple of years, and that's closer by committee. Even though during the trade deadline they got Carlos Estevez to be the 9th inning guy, so I guess they're more willing to get that specific 9th inning guy than not. So we'll see. We'll see. Tanner Scott would be a great pickup. Really fantastic pickup. So if we just look at Tanner Scott's numbers, just overall, just to see how good he has been. So last year, he had a WAR of 4. He was 9-6 with a 1.75 ERA in 72 innings. He had a 1.125 WHIP. And just looking at his numbers the past couple of seasons, so overall for the totality of 2024, he had the 1.75 ERA. He had the 1.18 ERA with the Miami Marlins, and then when he got to the San Diego Padres, he had a 2.73 ERA in 26 innings. So the numbers definitely got a little bit, worse, but still very good with the San Diego Padres. In 2023, he had a 2.31 ERA, and that basically, 2023 when he really started to improve. 2022, he had a 4.31. 2021, he had a 5.17. 2020, he had a 1.31. So the past couple of years, he's been showing that he could be one of the top reliever arms in Major League Baseball. But like I said, bullpen arms are very interchangeable throughout baseball. One guy can have a really good year, and then the very next year, they could be very bad. You could have 2 good years followed up by a bad year. Bullpen guys are very weird, and that's, the one thing in Major League Baseball where bullpen guys and signing them to long-term contracts could be very risky, because I did see one of the predictions could be like he gets a 4-year contract or something like that, and his age right now, he's 30 years old, so he probably looks like he would want to get at least a 3-4 year deal. And that's been like the mainstay of the contract length that I've been seeing, like 3-4 year deals for a guy like him. So now if I go to Ryan Helsley's numbers to see what he has been doing the past couple of seasons, because obviously, like I said, he's been in the trade rumors too. He's also 30 years old. Last year for the St. Louis Cardinals, he had a WAR of 3. He was 7-4 with a 2.04 ERA in 65 games. He had 49 saves on the season and 66 in the third innings pitched, with a WHIP of 1.01, with a WHIP of 1.101. And for last year was very good for him. 2023, he had a 2.45 ERA. 2022, he had a 1.25 ERA in 54 games there. So last year was more injury-riddled for Ryan Helsley. He only pitched in 36 innings in 2023, and then 2022, he pitched in 64 innings. So he's been a mainstay in the closer spot for the Cardinals for the past 3 years. And in terms of saves, just on how many he's been getting basically per year. This year he had 49. 2023 he had 14. Obviously he was shortened because of injury. And then 2022 he only had 19 because I don't think he was the de facto closer or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe this year he became the de facto closer for the Cardinals, but getting a combination of Ryan Helsley and a Tanner Scott would be a vast improvement for the bullpen. So that would be very fun to see if the Phillies can find a way to snag that, because they do sound like they want to improve the bullpen, because I'm sure they were shocked as the rest of us that the bullpen imploded like it did in the series against the New York Mets. Basically everybody that came out of the bullpen was bad. Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, Matt Strahm, Ryan Kerkering, you name it. Anybody that came out of the bullpen was just pure garbage. It was just completely unpredictable. No one expected that whatsoever for a bullpen that was really reliable for you, and one of the topper bullpens in baseball last season, to completely implode like that in a playoff series. It was just, no one would have thought of that were to happen. So definitely some intriguing things right there in terms of what the Phillies are looking to improve on that standpoint. But now let's get into some of these articles that I was talking about with, the Mac Gelb article talking about, I believe it was a conversation with John Middleton. So let's get to this. I have 3 articles right here. So one of them is from USA Today from Bob Nightingale. This one is specifically 10 teams to watch as MLB rumors swirl with GM meetings from free agency getting underway. So let's see where he can talk about the Phillies right here. So he has the Mets, he has the Cardinals, he has the Padres, and the Phillies. Let's see. So it's a very short, passage right here from the Phillies spot here on Bob Nightingale's article. So let's go over this. The Phillies can't believe they don't have a ring in Bryce Harper's era, and after knocking on the door the past few years, they are willing to make a huge move to change their fate. Dave Dombrowski, president of baseball operations, has not internally discussed pursuing Juan Soto with his staff, but is painfully aware they need to shake up their lineup. Simply, scouts say they are just too easy to pitch come crunch time with their big swingers and contact challenge hitters. That's saying it bluntly. If someone needs a slugger like Nick Castellanos, or outfield help in Brandon Marsh, or third baseman like Alec Boehm, the Phillies are listening. But don't believe for a second the Phillies won't keep spending, even if it means going beyond the third luxury tax threshold of $281 million. For the right player, Phillies owner John Middleton told reporters, "I have a high degree of confidence that Dave and I will go over the third limit for that specific player." So John Middleton definitely is willing to go over the third luxury tax. So there's something here from The Athletic, obviously, from the Matt Gelb article talking with John Middleton. And there's also, stuff from the MLB Trade Rumors website that, writes an article talking about, John Middleton expecting a higher payroll in 2025. So let's get to the MLB Trade Rumor article before we get to the Matt Gelb article from The Athletic. So if we go right here, so title is Phillies chairman John Middleton expects a higher payroll in 2025. The Phillies are no strangers to big spending, at least the last 4 seasons have seen the club post the 4th highest payroll on opening day in franchise history. It looks as though the payroll ceiling will continue to rise heading into 2025, as the team's chairman, John Middleton, told Scott Lauber of the Philly Inquirer earlier this week. Given where we are in contract cycles and minor league people coming up, I expect the player payroll to be higher than this year rather than lower, Middleton said. I'd be surprised if it's the same, and I'd be stunned, very stunned if it's lower. I don't see it being lower. According to projections from Cots Baseball Contract and Roster Resource, the Phillies have roughly somewhere between $259 million to $270 million already committed to their 2025 payroll in terms of pure dollars. The luxury tax number is even higher, as with Cots projecting an approximate tax number of $281.5 million, and Roster Resources has a rough estimate around $288.4 million. In either case, the Phillies are already slightly or well beyond the third luxury tax penalty tier of $281 million. While the Phillies have paid the tax in each of the last 3 seasons, the third tier has been something of an unofficial internal limit for the Phillies during the Middleton era. Though he has said in the past that it is by no means a hard cap, Middleton reiterated as much to Larber, saying that for the right player, I have a high degree of confidence that Dave Dombrowski and I would go over the limit. As Middleton noted, a spending increase was already baked into the Phillies' plans due to the internal raises alone. Zach Wheeler's extension kicks in this winter, so he'll go from $23.5 million to $42 million in each of the next 3 seasons. Phillies have also kept a pretty large arbitration class and might save only around $8.7 million if Austin Hayes, Colby Allard, and Garrett Stubbs are all non-tendered as expected. Dave Dombrowski could find some creative ways to move some larger contracts, say the money owed to Nick Castellanos and Taijuan Walker, off the books, to give the Phillies a little more breathing room off of the payroll front. Though such swaps are much easier said than done, what Middleton didn't address was whether or not the Phillies would be willing to top the 4th and final spending tier of $301 million in order to add another big-ticket talent on top of the Phillies' pre-existing core. So that's some interesting stuff there. And that goes back to the rumors circling around Nick Castellanos, and this is tying to Juan Soto a little bit. The only way the Phillies trade Nick Castellanos is if they're getting Juan Soto. If they're confident they're getting Juan Soto, because that's the only thing I would see there. You get a big contract off the books there, and also you're looking at, JT Realmuto's contract going into the final year, Kyle Schwarber's contract going into the final year. Those guys will be coming off the books. JT, what does he make? Almost $25 million. Kyle Schwarber makes, I believe, around $20 million or something like that, maybe around where Nick Castellanos is, and those guys are going into the last year, so that's, around 40 plus, near 40 going off the books there. So they can sign Juan Soto. It just, is it believable? Is it realistic? I have no idea. I'm more on the side of it's not realistic, but they're definitely going to play their hand and try the hardest they possibly can to get Juan Soto. I see that from the moves they are making, specifically in the investors' territory, where John Middleton is trying to get as much money possible to maybe go out there and afford a Juan Soto, so the Phillies can afford to make those taxes and pay the taxes back to Major League Baseball. But we'll see. There. And what else? So let's go to the Athletic article from Matt Gelb. It's a very long article, so I'm definitely going to look at certain points here and see, because it was basically a Q&A with John Middleton. So let's see. John Middleton on the Phillies' need for change, the payroll, and 2 stories he'll tell the players. Let's see. So this is in San Antonio, most likely for the GM meetings right now. That's where Matt Gelb is. So let's see. Let's get to some questions here from Matt Gelb. As you reflect, how much do you weigh 1 week in October versus 2 months of subpar play versus the bigger picture, which was 95 wins and a division title? You have to separate what my initial thinking was versus my thinking. I'm not sure. Is this for John Middleton or is this from Dave Dombrowski? I think this is more Middleton right here, so I'm trying to see here. Let's see. Let's see. 3 of the final 4 teams in this postseason had payrolls over $300 million. There is typically a strong correlation between spending and winning. Do you foresee the Phillies being able to sustain payrolls of $300 million range to compete with bigger spenders? Yes, I do. Stuff that's going to have to give. This is basically summarizing the same stuff that I've been talking about right here. Let's see. Did you divest some of your family stake? Let's see. Let's see. What else is there? You are passionate about winning. Has it become harder for you to separate the fan from a CEO? There's a lot to overlap. No, I don't think it's harder to separate. We all know what John Middleton thinks right here, basically. Yeah. But it definitely is. Let's see. Talking about changes here. Let's see. Middleton was very angry with the immediate aftermath of the team's postseason exits in the National League Division Series. Still, he said Middleton wanted to force a tougher conversation about how to push forward. But Dombrowski, the team's club president of baseball operations, forced those issues first. That's what I wanted to see, Middleton said. I wanted to see people reacting in the way like the house is on fire. Not, we got time, let's go lick our wounds, let's spend a couple of days off, let's relax and unwind, and then we'll come back. It is like literally by noon, Dave had 3 major conversations with all the key people in the organization, and that's exactly the way it should have been. An important Phillies offseason officially began Monday when free agency opened up and executives from across the sport gathered at Posh Texas Resort for the annual general managers meeting. The Phillies plan to spend, they'll pursue trades, the transactions won't be immediate, but the changes in Middleton's mind were, Dave brought everybody in, Middleton said. There's a sign of a healthy organization. That's a sign of an organization that says, you know what, things really didn't go well, and we need to do something about it. We need to be very intentional and specific about what we need to do. We need to be careful, thoughtful, and accurate in our evaluations of people and situations. We need to think about what needs to be changed and then how we're going to change it, and they did that. That book was written in the first week to 10 days. In a wide-ranging interview, talking about everything here with John Middleton. Let's see, talking about spending payrolls and all that stuff. It's basically summarizing a lot of the things that we talked about in the previous few minutes here. So there's definitely a lot of interesting things here on the Phillies route. So we'll see how things go in this offseason. A lot of things can happen, but John Middleton does seem adamant about making major changes, which is a very good thing. It's what I want to see, because you can't go back into next season with the same exact roster. Now, in terms of who those changes are going to be, like I said, obviously, I think they're going to be going after heavily Juan Soto. I don't think it's going to happen, but like Matt Gelb said, they're going to be aggressive in the trade market. They're going to be aggressive in free agency. They're not going to be afraid to spend money. They're going to do whatever it takes to make changes this offseason, and we'll see what those changes foresee. So it's basically just playing the waiting game. I'm not sure how quickly it's going to be. I do remember seeing someone post on Twitter that I forget which MLB Network analyst it was on a podcast, but they're saying that I wouldn't be shocked if Juan Soto comes to a decision by the winter meetings in terms of where he signs. So I think for Juan Soto, it's going to come down to between the Yankees, the Mets, and the Phillies. I think it's those 3 teams. I don't think he's going to go back out west. The Dodgers are obviously going to play their hands in that stuff, but I don't think he's going to go out west. I don't think, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, or anything like that. No one in the American League. I think he's mainly staying East Coast, and I think it's 3 teams. It's both New York teams and Philadelphia. That's where I think it's going to end up with those 3. And sadly, I do think it ends up in one of the New York teams, most likely the Mets, in my honest opinion. But I would love to be surprised. I would despise him going to the Mets, but that's what I expect at the end of the day. So, we got to wait and see. We do have a voicemail here, though, on the Anytime Hotline. We might as well get to that. See what Sean has to say here on the possible Phillies offseason stuff. Let's hear from Sean.
Phillies offseason, it could go a number of ways. I mean, my initial thought was I don't really expect a lot. I'm still kind of leaning that way, but, some things are starting to leak out. I think personally that would be a mistake. I mean, Juan Soto, let's start there. I always said if you're a hitter, why wouldn't you want to hit in Citizens Bank Park 81 times a year? Does the Bryce Harper, Kevin Long influence bring him here? I don't know. I'd love to have his bat, but changes have to be made, in my opinion. You know, I read the other day where Castellanos, Bohm, and Marsh are being bandied about in trade talk. I still don't see Bohm being swapped, although he would bring back the most. Castellanos would be tough to move because of that contract, but I think Brandon Marsh could go. And I still would not rule out my dark horse of JT Realmuto being moved. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't think there's going to be much with the pitching other than maybe replacing Estevez with Tanner Scott. And, of course, Painter getting the fifth starter spot with an innings limit. But we'll see what they do.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what they do. Andrew Painter definitely will be an interesting option for the last spot of the rotation because I do believe Taijuan Walker officially lost that ability. So who knows? Maybe they'll try to dump his contract somewhere. I have no idea. They maybe shed some payroll there. JT Realmuto definitely would be interesting, but maybe teams would be enticed just because it's 1 year left on the contract. But would teams be willing to take that on? I have no idea. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting option there. Will the Phillies maybe do something to maybe improve the backup option for backup catcher to give JT Realmuto more days off his legs? Maybe that could be a choice there because he is getting older. He's on the wrong side of 30. So, and there's a lot of mileage there on JT Realmuto's legs in the catcher position. He obviously had the surgery last year, I believe, on one of his legs, on one of his knees. So, there's definitely some things to consider there. Bullpen, I think they're going to be making some shakeup in the bullpen. Obviously, even though I wouldn't be shocked if Hoffman came back, I don't think they're bringing back Hoffman. Let him go earn his money elsewhere. And obviously, they're not bringing Estevez back. I would expect him to sign Tanner Scott. I think that's, the most obvious thing that's probably going to happen because a lot of people are predicting that, and that's where they're expecting it to be. So we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, they're going to go hard this offseason. They're going to make trades. Bohm, I think, is gone. I think Bohm is as good as gone. I think the playoffs and him getting benched told the entire story there. I think the organization's just tired with him. Like I said, Castellanos, the only way Castellanos is gone is if they're sure they're getting Juan Soto. So there's things to discuss. There's things to go over. And maybe that's for another day. But we'll see, because right now it's November. Winter meetings are not until next month, basically, at the end of December or in the middle of December. I forget when they are. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's going to be an interesting offseason. That definitely is the case there. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. So we'll see what happens in that case. How you doing, BJ? See you in the chat right there. So I think that'll do it for today, everybody. As I am trying to power through the congestion right here, like I said, I apologize because, like I said, my voice sounds very weird, and I hate the way it sounds with the congestion. I just can't breathe. I cannot breathe whatsoever. So I think this will be a good time to end it here. So what are your thoughts for the Phillies this offseason? What do you think they have to do? And what changes do they need to make? Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It does me a great deal of service. And also, don't forget to use the code TTP Sports, $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. It's a great deal. Do not pass it up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in here tonight.